Now, we've got a lot to get through. We can talk to Norman Brennan in a few moments' time. What is behind the rise in violent crime? Arguably, since the year dot, people have discussed and debated how things ain't what they used to be. Kids don't know they're born. This generation have got no idea what we went through. And back in the day, you could leave your front door open. Spoiler alert, you never could. However, criminality has always been with us. Criminals live among us, and those hell-bent on causing harm to others have existed since we first walked out of caves. But none of that means that things don't change. Societies can become more violent. Patterns of behaviour begin to emerge. Standards go by the wayside. Acceptable norms are recalibrated. Yardsticks are moved. We become desensitised to certain crimes as they increase. Don't let anyone tell you, though, that the kind of street behaviour, crimes, lawlessness and killings that we are seeing on our streets today are the same as it's always been. It isn't. Something has changed. Behaviour has changed. And where the hell has it come from? What is behind this rise in violent crime? We're living in an era, it seems to me, of a kind of social rudderless, a senselessness, killings daily, stabbings routine. Street crimes the norm. Yesterday, 3 people got stabbed because somebody wanted to nick a mobile phone. I mean, this is Wild West stuff. Remember this time. Just think about this era we're in, when our leaders lost control, when kids stab by default, when slaughter in broad daylight is not even remarkable. Again, 3 people stabbed because of a mobile phone while the sun shone and the police headquarters was 200 yards away. How do we get there? How on earth did we get there? 3 kids, arguably, who could have just legged it the moment some people tried to step in to help. They didn't. They whipped out the knives and stabbed them. Potentially to kill them. They could have killed them. These people were injured, and thankfully nobody died. Where do we point the finger, though? I think that's the big question. Is it parental? Is it the police? Is it the government? Or is it all three? Let's give it a go here. 0344 499 1000. And if we look through just some of the most recent... I almost don't want to read this list out, but this just gives you, as if you didn't already know, a kind of an idea of where we're at. July this year, 9-year-old Lilia Valutait, who was found stabbed to death in the centre of Boston in Lincolnshire. I mean, this was just horrific. Again, broad daylight. August the 10th, a man died, 3 other people injured. Series of incidents involving guns in the Scottish Highlands. August, dozens of years. Now, this was interesting, because this tells you about another sense of lawlessness. Remember the group of kids that decided to descend on the McDonald's in Nottingham city centre, who just thought, well, there's 50 of us, let's just go in there and wreck the place. Let's just, hit people if we have to, nick burgers, if we can get some money, all the better. Let's just go and absolutely wreck the joint. CCTV is all over the place. Not all of these people were balaclavaed up. They just thought that was an idea. That was okay. There was no problem. There was no handbrake on the decision to, en masse, go into McDonald's and wreck the joint. We're familiar, of course, with what happened in August. Olivia Pratt-Corbell, 9-year-old girl, shot and killed in Liverpool. Takio Nebhard, 21-year-old, stabbed to death on the last night of the Notting Hill Carnival. 16th of September, police officers stabbed repeatedly in the neck. Another constable stabbed through the arm after a man with a knife was challenged in central London. 22nd of September, 15-year-old boy stabbed to death outside a school in Huddersfield. Outside a school. Outside a school. I mean, just put the whole picture together. 14-year-old boy died after being stabbed in Gateshead. Today, another 14-year-old has been charged with his murder. Yesterday, a man rushed to hospital after being stabbed outside King's Cross railway station. We're familiar with the story of Thomas O'Halloran, 87, died at the scene after being attacked in broad daylight. He was 87, and on a mobility scooter. Now, this is an ongoing court case. We can't say too much, but the court has heard statements that he was repeatedly stabbed in the neck, chest and abdomen. And Ava White, of course, an argument over Snapchat ended the life of a 12-year-old being fatally stabbed in the neck. a 14-year-old boy, after confronting a 14-year-old boy who was filming her and her friends. I mean, this is in another stratosphere of out of control. I know you can go back any year, and you will go back any year and say, well, yeah, what about this? There was this murder, that murder, Stephen Lawrence, and, you know, you can keep going with that. But if you want to get a scene and a sense of an accumulation, then we are living in that era right now, right at this moment. We're living in an era where parents don't give a fig, where there's not enough cops to do what they need to do. The courts are absolutely rammed, and young people carry out this kind of criminality with a sense of impunity. And it must be that. It must be that. I'm pretty sure that the kind of people that would do this, in an ideal world, probably don't want to go to jail for 20 years. Not that some of the youngsters who carry out these crimes will ever get 20 years, but you broadly take the point. Despite the badge of honour and all the rest of it, I'm pretty sure most of them don't want to go to prison. So somewhere in there, they think they can get away with this. Now, we're not talking about somebody standing on somebody's foot or even punching them in the lug hole to try and nab a phone or a few quid. That was bad enough. We're talking here about systemic violence where whipping out a knife, sometimes a machete, is the default position. Not the last position, not the end result of a prolonged fight that's gone on for weeks between two mates. They've scrapped, they've argued, they've banged on each other's doors, they've had row after row, and finally it got too much, tempers flared, and one of them pulled out a blade. No, we're talking about in the first instant. Your first instant is to say, I'm going to take a blade from my pocket and kill someone. And kill someone. And so often this is the intention. It isn't even to maim or to mildly injure. It's about death. This is about actually ending someone's life. 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16... Look at the common denominator in some of those stories I've just read out. I think the average age in those stories is probably about 15. Perpetrator and victim. Don't anybody tell me this hasn't got a whole lot worse. I'd like to know what is behind that rise in violent crime. I'll raise you the parents as an obvious one to begin with. I think ultimately, whatever way you want to slice this one, all roads will lead back to mum or dad. In fact, let me rephrase that. All roads will lead back to mum or dad. Most of these kids will come from homes that are perhaps dysfunctional. How did that happen? We can argue that one perhaps another time. But surely the parental aspect. And I know that when these parents, very rarely but once in a while, you might see them interviewed. You see the parents of the bereaved interviewed. And sometimes there'll be a documentary that will talk to the parents of the perpetrators. And they will say, he was a nice boy, he was a lovely lad. And I'm sure there are some cases where, you know, the parent had no idea what their kid was doing after dark, climbing out the back window, nipping into town, larking around with some mates, doing a few Class Bs and As and whipping out the knife if somebody looked at them the wrong way. And that's kind of where we're at. We're not talking about crime because somebody killed their dog or somebody in their family. We're not talking about crime because somebody was robbed or a terrible injustice had taken place. We're talking about crime over a row, stabbed over a mobile phone. 3 people tried to intervene yesterday down in the capital, and they all got stabbed. The perps were trying to nick a mobile phone, for God's sake, probably worth 150 quid. And their reaction to being stopped was to stab. I mean, this is animal behaviour. This is terrible behaviour. So how, what, why did we get to this place where that has become the state of our nation? 0344 499 1000. What is behind the rise in violent crime?